A warm welcome to Lesbian Tales Unfolded. We appreciate each one of you being here. Before we begin, we'd love to know which corner of the globe are you watching from. Share with us in the comments. Now let's dive into today's story. The falcon wasn't listening again. Third time today. I watched Aquila circle high above, ignoring my whistles and the lure swinging from my gloved hand. Damn bird had a mind of her own. Come on, girl. Don't make me look bad in front of the donors next week. My reputation in Henderson was already hanging by a thread. 5 years ago, I'd been a Lara Campbell, rising star falconer with championship potential. Now I was just the redhead who'd choked. During nationals, lost her nerve and crawled back to her hometown with nothing but a rebellious peregrine and fading dreams. Aquila finally swooped down, landing on a fence post instead of my glove. Progress, at least. "You're as stubborn as I am," I muttered, approaching slowly. The morning sun caught her sleek feathers, reminding me why I'd fallen in love with these creatures. They were free, in ways I never would be. My phone buzzed, a reminder for dance class. I'd started contemporary dance as physical therapy after my accident, but it had become my only real escape. Somewhere I wasn't a Lara the Falcon failure, but just another body moving through space, anonymous in dimmed lights. "Be good," I told the bird as I secured her in the muse. "I'll be back with better treats if you decide to cooperate tomorrow." The community center was already buzzing when I arrived. I changed quickly, tying my fiery red hair into a messy bun. As I stretched at the bar, the door opened, and everyone's attention shifted. She wasn't from Henderson, I'd have remembered. Her tall, confident, with blonde hair catching light like spun gold. The newcomer spoke briefly with our instructor before joining us at the bar, setting down her water bottle and notebook with precise movements. "We have a new member today," chirped our instructor, Lena. "This is Iris Henderson, a wildlife specialist who's just moved here for work. Make her feel welcome." Henderson. Like our town. Interesting coincidence. Iris nodded politely, but didn't smile, her green eyes surveying the room with scientific detachment. When they landed on me, something flickered. Recognition. Interest, whatever it was, vanished as quickly as it appeared. The music started, and I lost myself in movement, until a flash of gold caught my eye. Iris danced like she was water, flowing from one position to the next without hesitation. Not technically perfect, but mesmerizing, the way she surrendered completely to the rhythm. Eyes closed. Body speaking volumes. Why was I watching her so intently? I forced my gaze away, focusing on my own reflection. My turns were tighter, my lines cleaner, but something about her freedom made my precision feel hollow. After class, I lingered, retying, my shoes deliberately slow. The new woman was talking to Lena about the local wildlife preserve. My preserve? Technically, though funding had become so scarce we could barely call it operational. "The migration patterns are changing," she was saying. "Birds are showing up weeks early, or not at all. The data suggests..." "You work with birds?" The words left my mouth before I could stop them. She turned, those green eyes assessing me with renewed interest. "Among other wildlife, yes. I'm heading up the new conservation initiative for the county." She extended her hand. Iris Henderson, Lara Campbell. Her grip was firm, confident, her palm calloused in ways that matched my own. "I run the raptor rehabilitation program at Northridge." "The falconer," she said, recognition dawning. "I've heard about your program. I was hoping to connect with you, actually." Something about the way she said it, professional yet somehow personal, made me suddenly aware of my sweaty dance clothes and messy hair. "I'm free tomorrow," I offered, surprising myself with the eagerness in my voice. "You could come see the birds." "I'd like that." Was I imagining the slight flush across her cheeks? Wildlife has always been my first love. Everything else comes second. As we exchanged numbers, I couldn't help wondering what, or who, came second in her life, and why I already cared so much about the answer. I've never been a morning person, but for some reason, I woke before my alarm. The early October sun Hadn't even crested the trees, and I was already dressed, checking my reflection more carefully than I had in months. Just professional courtesy, I told myself, smoothing my hair. The coffee shop near the community center opened at 6th Hauk. I grabbed a table by the window, spreading out my falcon rehabilitation notes to review before dance class. Professional meeting. With Iris afterward. Needed to be prepared. Nothing more. When the bell jingled and she walked in, my eyes betrayed me, lifting before I could pretend nonchalance. Iris looked different today. Hair loosely braided. Casual clothes, but still that straight-backed confidence. She didn't see me at first, ordering something complicated with almond milk. I pretended to be engrossed in my papers. Mature, Alara. Really mature. Mind if I join you? Her voice startled me, coffee sloshing dangerously close to my notes. Of course not. The gesture I made sent my cup flying, directly into her lap. Damn, I'm so sorry. The hot liquid spread across her notebook, my horror matching the surprise on her face. My dance notes, she exclaimed, jumping up. But instead of anger, a laugh bubbled from her throat, husky and genuine. Well, that's one way to start a morning. We spent the next 10 minutes blotting pages with napkins, heads bent close. Fingers occasionally brushing. Her hair smelled like pine, and something citrusy. So, why falcons? She asked as we salvaged what we could. Of all the wildlife specialties? Something about her genuine curiosity made me abandon my rehearsed professional. Answer, they're broken, but don't know it, I said quietly. Birds that come to me have been injured, traumatized, but they never stop trying to fly, never accept limits. Her eyes held mine longer than necessary. Sounds familiar. What about you? Conservation is a tough field. Iris's smile turned wistful. Grew up in cities. Nature was something in carefully managed parks. When I saw my first truly wild place at 19, it felt like finding something I'd lost, without knowing it was missing. We were almost late to dance class, arriving breathless and still talking. Lena paired us for partner exercises, something about complementary energies. I was hyper-aware of every point where our bodies aligned, the gentle pressure of her hand against my shoulder blade, the way she anticipated my movements. Relax into it, Alara, she whispered during a supported turn. Her breath tickled my ear. You're fighting the connection. When our hands met in transition, something electric passed. Between us, not sparks, more like recognition. Her fingers tightened slightly on mine. Her green eyes widening. Neither of us mentioned it. After class that afternoon, she came to see the raptors, as planned. I showed her Aquila, explaining the training challenges, professional distance maintained, despite how the sunlight caught in her blonde hair. May I? She asked, gesturing to my glove. I hesitated. Aquila was temperamental with strangers, but I slipped the leather glove onto Iris's slender arm, adjusting it carefully. She'll sense fear, I warned, standing close behind. Her, breathe normally. Iris nodded, jaw set in determination. I whistled for Aquila, who, surprisingly, glided down with uncharacteristic grace, landing perfectly on Iris's outstretched arm. The woman didn't flinch, even as powerful talons gripped the leather. She's magnificent, Iris whispered, her profile etched against the afternoon sky, eyes bright with wonder. Something twisted in my chest. Envy, that my bird had taken so easily to her. Or something else entirely. She likes you, I said, voice rougher than intended. Animals sense things people miss. She turned slightly. Our faces suddenly very close, don't you think? I stepped back, professional smile firmly in place. The conservation project you mentioned, tell me more. Over dinner. Professionally speaking, of course. Of course, she echoed, a hint of something disappointed or amused caught in her tone. Professionally. As we walked toward the parking lot, her hand brushed. Mine accidental, or deliberate. I couldn't tell. I only knew I was in dangerous territory, thinking about how Iris Henderson's fingers might feel intertwined with my own, about the electric current that seemed to run between us, about how badly I wanted to blur the line between professional and personal. just a colleague, I reminded myself. A professional connection. The lie wasn't convincing, even to me. The county funding letter arrived on a Tuesday. Thin envelope, never a good sign. I'd been through enough rejections to know what it meant before I even opened it. Regret to inform you. Budget constraints? Alternative. Allocations. Aquila watched from her perch as I crumpled the letter, hurling it against the wall of my tiny office. Northridge Raptor Rehabilitation Center would lose 30% of its already meager funding. 3 months, maybe 4, before I'd have to start releasing birds before they were ready. Or worse, transferring them to facilities hundreds of miles away. We'll figure something out, I told the falcon, who tilted her head as if considering my empty promise. Dance class that evening was a blur. I moved mechanically through positions, mind racing with calculations. Fundraisers, grants, selling my car. You're somewhere else tonight. Iris's voice cut through my panic as we stretched after class. 2 weeks of dancing together had created a comfortable familiarity between us. Just work stuff. I attempted a dismissive smile. Funding problems. She was too perceptive. When I didn't answer, she nodded knowingly. The letter came today. I got one too. Your project got cut? I asked, surprised. The Conservation Initiative was the county's golden child. The opposite, they doubled my budget. She sat beside me, our shoulders almost touching, which seems unfair, considering what they did to you. The bitterness in her voice caught me off guard. It's not your fault. No, but it is my opportunity. She turned to face me fully, those green eyes intense. I've been reviewing your records. Ilara, your rehabilitation success rates are impressive, despite minimal resources. You've been reviewing my records? Professional interest. A hint of a blush colored her cheeks. What would you say to a partnership? My project needs expertise like yours. We could share resources, funding. Hope flickered, dangerously. You'd do that? The birds don't care which budget feeds them. Her smile was warm, genuine. Come to my office tomorrow night. We'll draft a proposal. Tomorrow turned into a week of late nights, poring over spreadsheets and environmental reports. Each evening, the professional distance between us seemed to shrink. By Friday, we were working side by side at her kitchen table, sleeves rolled up, takeout containers pushed aside. If we combine these survey areas, Iris leaned across me to point at the map, her arm brushing mine. Neither of us moved away. The contact lingered, deliberate. It could work, I agreed, voice slightly. When I looked up, her face was inches from mine, eyes dropping briefly to my lips. The shrill ring of her phone shattered the moment. She jerked back, fumbling to answer. Henderson. Yes, sir. No, I understand. The urgency. I busied myself with the papers, heart hammering stupidly against my ribs. Sorry, she sighed after hanging up. The county supervisor wants preliminary findings by Monday. The professional mask slipped back into place between us, but something had shifted, acknowledged, then tucked away again. 2 days later, storm clouds gathered ominously on the horizon as I checked the rehabilitation enclosures. The Weather Service had issued warnings, but the birds needed feeding regardless. My phone buzzed with a text from Iris. Storm coming. Everything secure? I smiled at her concern, typing back, almost done. You at the cabin? Field samples need refrigeration. Drive safe. I'd barely secured the last enclosure when the downpour began. Not gentle rain, but sheets of water cascading from a blackened sky. Lightning split the darkness, thunder cracking immediately after. My truck refused to start, engine clicking uselessly. 3 attempts, then nothing. Iris's cabin was just 2 miles through the wildlife preserve, closer than town. I was drenched within seconds of leaving shelter, wind whipping rain sideways into my face. Lightning illuminated the path in strobing flashes, thunder vibrating through my chest. Her cabin appeared like a mirage, warm light spilling from windows. I pounded on the door, shivering violently. Alara! She pulled me inside, shock widening her eyes. You're soaked. What happened? Truck. Dead, I managed through chattering teeth. You walked in this? Her hands were already pulling at my jacket, concern overriding propriety. You need dry clothes. Now. Minutes later, wrapped in her flannel shirt and sweatpants, I sat before the fireplace while she made tea. The domestic intimacy of it struck me. Her clothes against my skin, the safety of her space while chaos raged. "Outside." "You could have called," she said, handing me a steaming mug, our fingers brushing. "I would have come for you." "Reception's terrible at the center." I took a sip, warmth spreading through me. "Besides, I'm pretty self-sufficient." "Everyone needs help sometimes." She settled beside me, firelight playing across her features, even Alara Campbell. The storm knocked out power an hour later, leaving only firelight. We talked into the night, about her childhood and bustling cities, my lifetime in Henderson, her failed relationships with ambitious men who couldn't understand her dedication to wildlife, my own romantic disappointments. "Never found the right person?" she asked softly, shadows dancing across her face. I hesitated, weighing truth against comfort. Found a few wrong ones. Something in her expression changed, understanding dawning. Wrong in what way? Wrong expectations, wrong genders, sometimes. Her smile was small, but significant, firelight reflecting in her eyes. I know something about that too. The confession hovered between us, neither addressing it directly. Outside, the storm howled on, but inside the cabin, something quiet and meaningful was taking shape. Fragile as a bird's first flight, but just as natural. I woke to sunlight streaming across unfamiliar floorboards, momentarily disoriented, until memories of the storm flooded back. Iris's cabin, the fireplace, conversation, the revelations we'd shared. She was already awake, making coffee in the kitchen. The power had returned sometime during the night. "Morning," she said, smiling tentatively. "Sleep okay on the couch?" "Better than I expected." I stretched, suddenly aware of the intimacy, wearing her clothes, sleeping in her space. "Thanks for the rescue." "Anytime." She handed me a steaming mug. "The roads should be clear enough to get your truck towed." Normal morning conversation, as if we hadn't crossed some invisible boundary between us last night, as if my heart wasn't racing at the proximity of her. Back at my cabin, after the tow truck had retrieved my vehicle, I changed into my own clothes, releasing a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Space to think clearly again. Whatever was developing between Iris and me needed careful consideration. My hand brushed the empty spot at my throat, where my grandmother's locket usually hung. Panic surged through me as I checked my nightstand, bathroom counter, and jewelry box. The locket, rose gold, with intricate engravings, containing a faded photograph of my grandmother as a young dancer, was gone. I retraced yesterday's movements, the rehabilitation center, dance class, Iris's cabin. Could it have fallen off during the storm, or before? It wasn't just jewelry, it was history, connection, the only family heirloom I possessed. I tore apart my cabin, searching, growing increasingly frantic. When had I last definitely seen it? Before the storm, certainly before Iris's cabin. The thought formed like a stone dropping into still water. I'd been vulnerable, sharing things I rarely discussed. She'd been so understanding, so perfect, too perfect. What did I really know about Iris Henderson, beyond her professional credentials and the carefully curated personal details she'd shared? She'd arrived in Henderson with impeccable timing, just as new conservation funding appeared. She'd sought me out specifically. Now my most precious possession was missing, after spending the night at her place. No, I was being paranoid, Iris. Wasn't a thief. The evidence was circumstantial at best. But the locket was irreplaceable, and its absence gnawed at me. I tried calling Iris casually that afternoon. "Just checking if I left anything at your place last night," I said, aiming for nonchalant. "Don't think so," she answered, distracted by something in her background. "I had to rush to a meeting with county officials this morning. Is something important missing?" The slight hesitation before her question triggered my suspicions again. "Just a necklace. A family heirloom." "Oh, I didn't notice any jewelry. What does it look like?" I described the locket, listening for any hint of recognition in her voice. I'll Keep an eye out, she promised. Maybe it fell off during the storm. I could help you look along the path you took. Her offer seemed genuine. Maybe I was imagining things. 2 days passed. The missing locket cast a shadow over our project work, though I tried to hide it. Every time Iris smiled at me, that warm, open smile, doubt crept in. Was there calculation behind those green eyes? You seem distant, she finally said during a planning session at the center. Is everything okay? I wanted to confront her directly, but professional considerations held me back. Our partnership was saving my rehabilitation program. Without her resources, the birds would suffer. Still upset about my grandmother's locket, I admitted. It's the only thing I have of hers. Sympathy softened her features. We'll find it, I promise. The deadline for our joint proposal approached. We worked increasingly long, hours, the professional tension now complicated by personal undercurrents. I caught her watching me when she thought I wasn't looking, not with calculation, but with something that resembled longing. Or was that just what I wanted to see? The migration corridor needs additional protection, she argued during a particularly heated discussion. These development plans would be catastrophic. I agree with the principle, but this approach will alienate the county grants. I countered, we need their support. Sometimes you have to force people to do the right thing. Something in her tone reminded me she was fundamentally still a stranger to me. That night, I dreamed of the locket opening, to reveal not my grandmother's photograph, but Iris's face, smiling enigmatically. I woke with resolve. Before our project advanced further, I needed certainty, trust or suspicion. Couldn't work beside her with this doubt between us. The conservation project presentation was in 3 days. The joint proposal represented salvation for my rehabilitation center and Iris's chance to make a significant environmental impact. Success depended on our unified front, but as I prepared to meet her that morning, the missing locket weighed on me like an accusation. Professional opportunity versus personal integrity, birds versus betrayal. We need to talk, I texted her about the locket. Her response came immediately, yes, we do. The 3 dots appeared, indicating she was typing more, then disappeared. My phone remained silent afterward, leaving me wondering what she had decided not to say. We met at her cabin, neutral territory that suddenly felt charged with tension. Iris opened the door before I could knock, eyes shadowed with what looked like a sleepless night. Come in, she said quietly. I have something to show you. My heart hammered against my ribs. Confirmation of my worst suspicions. Or something else entirely? She led me to her study, a small room lined with books and filing cabinets. Spread across her desk were photographs I'd never seen before, black and white images of dancers from what appeared to be the 1950s. I've been searching, she said, gesturing to the mess of papers, ever since you mentioned your grandmother's locket. I picked up one photograph, 2 young women in dance costumes, arms around each other's waists, smiling broadly. Something about one woman's eyes looked hauntingly familiar. That's my grandmother, Iris said quietly, pointing to the shorter woman, Eleanor Henderson. And that's, my voice faltered, that's my grandmother, Catherine Campbell. Iris nodded, pushing another photograph forward. The same women, older now, standing before what appeared to be the very community center where we'd met. I found these while searching for your locket. My grandmother left me a box of memorabilia I've never fully explored. Her voice trembled slightly. Our grandmothers knew each other, Alara, they weren't just acquaintances. Look at how they're standing. The intimacy in the photographs was undeniable, the way they leaned into each other, hands clasped, gazes locked. There's more. She hesitated, then opened a folder. Letters. I scanned the first page. My grandmother's handwriting, instantly recognizable. My dearest Ellie, another night without you feels like an eternity. The recital went well, though dancing without you leaves me feeling half myself. This separation is unbearable but necessary, until we can find a way. My hands trembled. They were, yes. Iris's voice was soft, in a time when they couldn't be, not openly. I sank into a chair, photographs and letters swimming before my eyes. My grandmother, proper, traditional Catherine Campbell, had loved a woman. Iris's grandmother, Henderson, isn't just a coincidence, is it? I asked, pieces clicking into place. You came here knowing? No, she interjected quickly. I didn't know until after we met. The name of the town? Yes, that caught my attention. My grandmother mentioned living in a place bearing our family. Name but you? The connection between us? She shook her head. That was coincidence. Or fate. And the locket? Pain flickered across her face. I've been turning the cabin upside down looking for it. I thought maybe it fell from your clothes during the storm. I studied her face for deception, but found only earnest concern. The suspicion that had been building suddenly seemed absurd. Ugly, even. I believe you, I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. Relief flooded her expression, followed quickly by something like determination. She reached for another folder, older and more worn. There's something else you should see about why they separated. The story unfolded through yellowed newspaper clippings and faded letters. A scandal. Accusations. 2 women forced apart by the conventions of their time. Eleanor Henderson leaving. Town abruptly, Catherine Campbell marrying soon after. They were caught, Iris said simply, and everything fell apart. Rain began pattering against the windows as we pieced together their story. The storm that had brought us together before returned, as if emphasizing the circular nature of our discovery. They never saw each other again, I murmured. The tragedy of it settling over me. According to these letters, your grandmother kept dancing. Mine never did, Iris said, a curious edge to her voice. She said she couldn't bear it without Catherine. The implications hung between us. History repeating, or a chance to write a different ending. This doesn't have to mean anything about us, I said carefully, though the connection felt overwhelmingly significant, doesn't it? Iris stood, frustration suddenly animating her. The moment I saw you dance, I felt something I couldn't explain. Now this. She gestured to the evidence of our intertwined past. Tell me you don't feel it too. What I feel doesn't matter, the words burst out, louder than intended. My rehabilitation center is hanging by a thread. Your funding is what's keeping it alive. This, us, complicates everything professionally. Damn the professional consequences, she snapped, crossing the room toward me. I'm tired of dancing around what's happening between us. Rain hammered harder against the windows, thunder cracking overhead. The storm outside matched the emotional turbulence within. You've been holding back, she said, close enough now that I could see the flecks of gold in her green eyes. So have I, because of work, because of doubts, because of this damn missing locket. Iris? No. Her voice softened, breaking slightly. Life is too short for regrets. Our grandmothers learned that the hard way. The final barrier between us dissolved as her lips found mine, tentative at first, then with growing certainty. The kiss deepened as rain pounded against the roof, my hands moving to her waist, her fingers threading through my hair. Years of loneliness and confusion washed away in the storm of our connection. We broke apart, breathless, foreheads touching, somewhere in the deluge of sensation. I found clarity. This wasn't just attraction, or coincidence, or professional collaboration. This was recognition. Finding a missing piece I hadn't known was lost. As rain continued to fall outside, we found our way to each other, the ghosts of our grandmother's thwarted love giving way to something new, something ours alone. History didn't have to repeat. It could instead come full circle, finding completion. The first snow of winter dusted Henderson 3 weeks later, transforming the landscape into something magical and new, like us. Everything was still so fragile between Iris and me. This connection, we were carefully nurturing while trying to untangle the complex history of our grandmothers. Look at this, Iris said, spreading another letter on the kitchen table where we had taken to working in the evenings. Her cabin had become our research headquarters, the place where we pieced together the past. They were planning to leave together, start fresh somewhere people didn't know them. I scanned the faded handwriting. April 1958. That's right. Before the scandal broke, They were so close to their happy ending, sadness tinged her voice as she reached for my hand across the table. The casual intimacy still surprised me. How quickly it had become natural to touch, to lean into each other's. Space outside, snowflakes swirled in the glow of porch lights. We'd spent every evening like this since the rainstorm that had brought us together, dividing our time between project work and historical detective work. The conservation presentation was tomorrow, our professional partnership about to face its first major test. We should focus on the slides for tomorrow, I said reluctantly, pulling the laptop closer. Iris nodded, though her eyes lingered on the letters. It feels important somehow, understanding what happened to them. It is, I agreed, but so is saving the birds. We worked in companionable silence for an hour, fine-tuning our proposal. The funding partnerships we'd created were innovative, maybe even revolutionary for rural conservation work. If approved, both our programs would not just survive, but thrive. "We make a good team," she murmured, reviewing our final numbers professionally. I teased, nudging her foot under the table. Her smile was answer enough. My phone vibrated with a text. Derek, my assistant at the rehabilitation center. We'd never been close, but he'd stepped up admirably during my frequent absences these past weeks. "Everything okay?" Iris asked, noting my frown. "Derek's asking about tomorrow's presentation. Wants to know if he should attend as support." That's thoughtful. Something in her tone made me glance up. "You don't like him?" "I don't know him," she corrected carefully, "but he seems territorial around you." I laughed. "Derek? No way. We've worked together for years. He's just enthusiastic about the project." "If you say so." She closed the laptop, "but I've seen how he watches you when you're not looking." "Is that jealousy I detect, Dr. Henderson?" I stood, moving behind her chair to massage her shoulders. "Because it's completely unnecessary." She tilted her head back, looking up at me. "Scientists observe, that's all I'm doing." Her lips curved in a smile that dissolved my teasing mood into something more serious. I leaned down to kiss her, still marveling at the permission to do so. "Stay tonight," she whispered against my mouth. I had several times since that first storm, but always with the pretense of late work or bad weather. Tonight would mean something different. A choice, not circumstance. "Yes," I said simply. Later, as snow continued to fall outside her bedroom window, I traced a constellation of freckles across her shoulder. "When did you know that I wanted you to stay?" She caught my hand, pressing a kiss to my palm. "That you were attracted to women." The question had been on my mind, part of the constant comparing of our stories to our grandmothers. She was quiet for a moment. "College officially, but I think I always knew, just didn't have a framework for it." "You? High school?" I smiled at the memory. Sarah Davies, captain of the debate team. First heartbreak too, and after a few relationships, nothing that stuck. I hesitated. The last one ended badly, right before my accident at Nationals. Another, Falcon trainer. She left when I couldn't compete anymore. Iris's arms tightened around me. Her loss. We fell silent, listening to the soft patter of snow against glass. "I found something else today," she said eventually, a newspaper article from 1960, 2 years after they were separated. "And your grandmother's husband, your grandfather, died suddenly. Heart attack. I knew that. She never remarried." The article mentioned she'd moved back to Henderson to raise your father alone. Iris propped herself up on one elbow after Eleanor had already left town. The significance settled slowly. "You think they never knew that they could have had a second chance?" "I don't know." Her expression was troubled, but it makes me think about chances not taken. Timing. Fate. I understood the unspoken question. What were we doing? Where was this leading? The professional and personal entanglement, the echoes of our past. "We're not them," I said firmly. Different time, different circumstances, but similar patterns. Her thumb traced my bottom lip. "I don't want to look back. Decades from now, wondering what might have been." The weight of legacy pressed on us both. Not just our grandmother's story, but what we were writing now, tomorrow's presentation, the future of both our projects, and this fragile blooming thing between us. "We won't," I promised, pulling her closer. No regrets. But even as she melted against me, I couldn't shake the feeling that something still remained hidden. The missing locket, the gaps in our grandmother's story, and Derek's odd text with its subtle undercurrent of warning. The presentation should have been our triumph. Every slide perfect, our data compelling, our partnership a model of cross-discipline collaboration. The county grants seemed genuinely impressed, nodding along as Iris, and I tag-teamed the conservation proposal until Grant raised his hand during the question period. "Fascinating proposal," he said, voice dripping with false enthusiasm, "but I'm concerned about certain irregularities in the land survey data." Iris frowned. "Irregularities?" "Yes," he slid a folder across the table. "These coordinates don't match. County records." I watched confusion flash across Iris's face as she examined the papers. "This isn't my data. These aren't the surveys we submitted. They came from your office, Dr. Henderson." My stomach dropped as the room temperature seemed to plummet. Someone had tampered with our proposal. "There's been a mistake," I interjected. "We have the original surveys, which will need time to verify." Grant cut in smoothly. "Given these discrepancies, I moved to postpone decision on this proposal, pending further investigation." The motion passed unanimously. Outside the meeting room, Iris leaned against the wall, face pale with shock. "Someone switched the survey data," she said. "This could set us back months, maybe kill the project entirely." "Who would do that?" I asked, though a suspicion was already forming. "Developers, maybe. There's significant interest in parts of that land." She rubbed her temples. "The timing couldn't be worse. The migration season starts next week." Back at the rehabilitation center, Derek was waiting. His sympathetic expression felt rehearsed. "Heard about the meeting?" he said. "Tough break." "How did you hear so quickly?" I asked, studying him carefully. He shrugged. "Small town. Word travels. Not that fast." I set my bag down deliberately. The meeting ended 20 minutes ago. Something flickered in his eyes. Satisfaction, worry, before he masked it. "Alara, we need to talk about Iris." "What about her?" "I've been doing some research. Her previous projects have a pattern of focusing on high-value land that eventually gets developed. My defenses rose immediately. That's ridiculous. She's dedicated her life to conservation. People aren't always what they seem." He stepped closer. "You've been spending a lot of time with her, personally. It's affecting your judgment. The accusation hung between us. How did he know about the personal aspect of our relationship?" "We'd been careful." "You're out of line," I said coldly. "Am I?" "You've been neglecting the birds. Aquila's training has regressed. The new hawk isn't eating properly." He gestured around the center. "This place was your whole life before she showed up." His words hit a nerve. I had been less present, caught up in Iris and our grandmother's story. But his concern felt performative, his timing suspicious. "If you have concerns about my management, put them in writing," I said. "Otherwise, I need to prepare for tomorrow's flight demonstrations." Derek left, but his insinuations lingered like a bad smell. The next morning brought disaster. The demonstration for potential donors was supposed to showcase Aquila's progress. Instead, when I opened the muse, her perch stood empty. "She was secure last night," I told the assembled staff, panic rising. "Check all the enclosures, the surrounding woods. She can't have gone far with her training. Raven is still on." But hours of searching yielded nothing. My prized falcon, the heart of our rehabilitation program, had vanished. Iris arrived as dusk was falling, finding me alone at the edge of the property, still calling hopelessly for the bird. Derek called. "Me," she said, zipping her jacket against the cold. "What can I do?" "She wouldn't just leave," I said, voice breaking. Someone took her or released her deliberately. Understanding dawned in her eyes. The same someone who sabotaged our proposal. We returned to the center to find most of the staff gone. Only Derek remained, organizing search parties for the morning. "I've called every rehabilitation center within 100 miles, he reported. No one spotted her yet. As he spoke, my gaze fell on his desk. Beneath some papers, the corner of a familiar notebook peeked out. Iris's survey notes, which should have been submitted with our proposal. I kept my face neutral as we made plans for the morning search. Once Derek left, I turned to Iris. "We need to search the mountains," I said loud enough to be heard if anyone lingered outside. Then lowering my voice, "And we need to check Derek's desk now." The desk was locked, but the ancient filing cabinet beside it wasn't. Inside, buried under routine paperwork, we found the original survey data and most damning correspondence with Eastern Ridge developers. "He's been feeding them information," Iris whispered, "using his position here to undermine both our projects and Aquila," I asked, heart squeezing painfully. She touched my arm gently. "We'll find her. But first, we need to secure this evidence." As we slipped the papers into Iris's bag, snow began falling outside, thick, determined flakes that would cover tracks, including Aquila's. "We leave at dawn," I said, resolve hardening within me. "If she's in those mountains, I'll find her." The storm intensified through the night. By morning, 6 inches of snow blanketed Henderson. Dangerous conditions for searching, but I wouldn't wait. Aquila's. Chances diminished with every passing hour. Iris insisted on coming with me. As we loaded the truck with supplies, the first golden rays of dawn broke through heavy clouds. Somewhere in the mountains, my falcon waited, and with her, perhaps answers about Derek's betrayal and the sabotage that threatened everything Iris and I had built, both professionally and personally. The mountains were treacherous after the snowfall. My truck strained against the incline, tires spinning, periodically before finding purchase. Beside me, Iris studied the map, marking locations where Aquila might seek shelter. "The old fire watchtower," she suggested. "It's the highest point with shelter. A falcon would be drawn to the elevation." I nodded, throat tight with worry. If Derek released her with her raven still attached, she could be trapped somewhere, unable to hunt. The unspoken fear hung between us or already dead from exposure or predators. We abandoned the truck when the road became impassable, continuing on snowshoes. The temperature dropped steadily as we climbed, our breath forming clouds before us. I carried the lure and Aquila's favorite treats, whistling periodically despite knowing the wind would carry the sound away. "She's well trained," Iris offered encouragingly. "She knows how to survive." "But she trusts humans," I countered. "That makes her vulnerable." By midday, we'd reached the ridge trail that led to the old tower. The snow had stopped, but the wind had picked up, whipping loose powder across the exposed mountainside. My fingers were numb despite my gloves, and Iris's cheeks were alarmingly red with cold. "We should turn back," she said, voice barely audible over the wind. "The temperature's dropping too fast." "Just the tower," I insisted. "Then we'll head down." The tower stood stark against the winter sky, its weather-beaten frame a monument to an earlier era of conservation. As we approached, I whistled again, the familiar pattern Aquila knew. Nothing. Climbing the rickety stairs, we found the observation. Platform empty, safe for years of dust and debris. No sign of my falcon. Alara. Iris grasped my arm, pointing east. "Look." A dark speck circled against the distant clouds, too far to identify. But the distinctive flight pattern sent hope surging. "Through me! Aquila!" I called, voice breaking as I waved the lure. The speck vanished behind a distant ridge. "We have to go after her," I said, already heading for the stairs. "The storm's getting worse," Iris warned, pointing to darkening clouds rolling in from the west. "We might not make it back before dark. I'm not leaving without her." The determination in my voice must have convinced her. With a resigned nod, she followed me down the tower steps and across the ridge toward where we'd spotted the bird. The path narrowed treacherously, falling away on one side to a steep ravine. We moved carefully, single file, when the first snowflakes of the new storm began falling. "This is madness," Iris shouted over the rising wind. "We need shelter." She was right. The temperature was plummeting, visibility decreasing by the minute. But turning back meant abandoning Aquila, maybe forever. "There's an old ranger cabin half a mile ahead," I called back. "We can wait out the storm there." The half mile felt like 10 as the storm intensified. By the time the cabin appeared, a small, dark shape against the whiteout conditions, my extremities had lost sensation, and Iris was stumbling with exhaustion, The door was frozen shut. It took both of us, shoulders pressed against the weathered wood, to force it open. Inside was cold and dark, but blessedly free from wind. "Check for firewood," I managed through chattering teeth. "I'll secure the door." The cabin was basic but well maintained by the Forestry Service. A stack of dry wood stood beside a small iron stove, 2 narrow cots, emergency supplies in a metal container. Iris's hands trembled too badly to strike the matches. I took them gently, our fingers brushing with purpose despite the dire circumstances. The kindling caught flames, spreading slowly to the larger logs. "Body heat," she said, already unrolling the emergency blankets from the supply kit. "We need to get warm now before hypothermia sets in." We shed our wet outer layers, huddling together on the narrow cot closest to the stove, her body pressed against mine, shivering gradually subsiding as warmth returned painfully to frozen extremities. "Some rescue mission," I murmured as feeling returned to my fingertips. "Now we both need saving." Her arms tightened around me. "We'll find her tomorrow. The storm will pass." Outside, wind howled like a living thing, rattling the cabin's windows. Inside, cocooned in emergency blankets and each other's arms, a different kind of storm was quieting. "This isn't how I imagined getting you into bed again," Iris said, a hint of humor warming her voice. I turned to face her, our noses almost touching in the confined space. "No regrets, remember?" "None." Her fingers traced the curve of my cheek. "Except, maybe not checking the weather forecast more carefully." As the cabin warmed, we shed more layers, skin against skin becoming necessary for survival rather than desire, though desire kindled nonetheless. Her heartbeat against mine felt like the only solid thing in a world reduced to howling wind and swirling snow. "Tell me about her," I said softly. "Your grandmother." Iris was quiet for a moment, her breath warm against my neck. She never stopped dancing. Actually, just not in public. Had a studio in her basement where she thought no one could see. I found her there once, moving like she was partnering with someone invisible. My grandmother kept a music box by her bed. Remembered she played it every night before sleeping. I never understood why it made her cry. The parallels weren't lost on either of us. 2 women separated by circumstance, carrying their love hidden away from the world. "We're not them," Iris whispered, echoing my earlier assertion. "No," I agreed. "We're writing our own story." Dawn broke clear and brilliant, the storm spent during the night. We emerged from the cabin to a transformed landscape, unbroken white in every direction, trees heavy with snow, the sky a perfect blue. And there, perched on the cabin's snow-covered roof, was Aquila, watching me with her intelligent eyes, as if she'd been waiting all along. "Phantom, easy, girl," I whispered, moving slowly toward the cabin roof, where my falcon watched with weary eyes. Her dresses were tangled, one leg held at an awkward angle. Someone had definitely released her, deliberately. She recognized me instantly, settling onto my gloved arm with a soft chittering sound that might have been relief. Iris stood back, giving us space for our reunion, her smile as bright as the snow-reflected sunlight. "How did she find us?" she wondered aloud. "She was looking," I said simply, checking Aquila for injuries, just like we were looking for her. The descent was easier than our frantic climb. Clear skies marked the trail, and the precious weight of Aquila on my arm giving purpose to each step. We reached my truck by midday, the falcon secured safely in her travel crate. "We need to deal with Derek," Iris said as we drove back toward Henderson. "The evidence we found will be his word against our sunless we can." "Prove he took Aquila," I finished. "We need more." The rehabilitation center was quiet when we arrived, most staff still out searching the lower forests for the missing falcon. I settled Aquila in the medical examination area, relieved to find her injuries minor despite her ordeal. "Let me check." "The office computer?" Iris suggested. "If Derek's been communicating with developers, there might be email evidence." I nodded, focusing on cleaning Aquila's ravenous beak. "Be careful if he comes back." "I'll say I'm gathering data for the revised proposal." She kissed me quickly before heading to the administrative building. 20 minutes later, she returned with a flash drive and a triumphant expression. "Got him," she announced. Emails. to Eastern Ridge going back 6 months. He's been feeding them inside information about vulnerable species habitats, helping them work around environmental protections, and sabotaging our proposal to delay the expanded conservation area. Added, anger coiling tight in my chest. There's more. She hesitated. He's been tracking your grandmother's property. Apparently, there's a clause in the original deed that makes it critical for the development plans. My family's land, the small cabin and surrounding acres that had been my grandmother's sanctuary after my grandfather died, the place where she'd never removed the photographs of Iris's grandmother. I now realized, let's go to the sheriff, I said, securing Aquila's enclosure. And this, now 2 days later, Derek was facing multiple charges: theft, fraud, corporate espionage. The developers were under investigation, and our conservation proposal had been fast-tracked for approval, the grants eager to distance themselves from the scandal. There's still something I don't understand, I told Iris as we walked the perimeter of what would soon be protected land. Why go to such lengths over my grandmother's property? It's just a few acres. Water rights maybe, or mineral deposits? She shrugged. Whatever it is, it's protected now. We reached the ridge overlooking Henderson. The town spread below us like a miniature model. The community center where we'd first danced together. The cabin where we discovered our shared history. The rehabilitation center that would now thrive. With new funding. There's one more thing. Iris reached into her pocket, hesitant. Suddenly, I found this while going through Derek's desk yesterday. My grandmother's locket, its rose gold gleaming in the sunlight. He took it, I whispered, accepting the precious object with trembling fingers. It was in a sealed envelope addressed to Eastern Ridge. I think he stole it when he visited your cabin after the storm. The weight of it felt right in my palm, familiar and precious. I clicked it open, expecting to see my grandmother's faded picture. Instead, the locket contained 2 photographs, one on each side, my grandmother and Iris's, young and smiling, their features mirroring our own across generations. He must have opened it, I said, confused. My grandmother's picture was alone when I last saw it. Iris shook her head. Look closer. Examining the photographs, I realized they'd been cut from a single image, the same one we'd found in Iris's grandmother's belongings, cut precisely to fit the locket's 2 sides. They were never really separated, Iris said softly. Not in your grandmother's heart. The spring dance recital at the community center marked the public unveiling of our expanded conservation initiative. The stage was set with images of the now protected wildlife corridor and rehabilitation center. After the official presentation, Lena had arranged a special performance. I stood center stage, waiting for the music to begin. Across from me, Iris took position, her blonde hair catching the spotlight. Her smile meant only for me. The music, a restored recording from the 1950s, filled the auditorium. We began to move, bodies responding to the melancholy strains, telling a story of separation and reunion, loss and rediscovery. In the front row sat the county grants and major donors. Behind them, the people of Henderson, some still whispering about the scandal, others about the 2 women who had saved their natural heritage, and about us. There were always whispers, but unlike our grandmothers, we danced in the open, our connection undisguised. Azah. The music reached its crescendo. Iris and I came together center stage, the choreography mirroring the photograph in the locket. Our final pose, hands clasped, foreheads touching, drew appreciative applause. Ready? She whispered as the curtain began to fall. I nodded, heart racing with certainty. As we turned to face the audience, the locket hung at my throat, warm against my skin. Our grandmothers watching as we took our bow together, not as colleagues, not as friends, but as what we had become. Partners in every sense, completing a circle begun decades before. The audience rose in a standing ovation. As Iris's hand found mine, our fingers intertwining in plain sight. No hiding, no separation. Just 2 women finally writing their own ending.